There's been no shortage of video games that are known for their bizarre qualities, from their gameplay to their stories. As much as I love a deeply introspective and thought-provoking title, I also gleefully enjoy those that don't take themselves seriously. During my recent craving for fun PS3-era titles, I remembered the cover of a game that I saw on a store shelf back when I was around 16, that being Lollipop Chainsaw. Since then, I've only heard about it in passing, whether referring to unusual cult classics or that achievement. So I finally decided to try it for myself. Apart from being enamored by how this campy game wholeheartedly embraces the absurdity of itself, what I immediately appreciated most about Lollipop Chainsaw was its art style, which follows the vibrant aesthetic of classic comic book art. All of the menus and user interface elements are in the style of comic book panels and callouts, along with a faint vignette of the dotted texture of printed comics. Even characters and certain objects are painted with bold outlines and shadows, mimicking illustrative line art and shading. I was so interested in discovering more about the conceptualization of the game's visuals that I purchased a couple art books, and spent hours learning about the development history. It didn't take long to understand that game designer and Grasshopper manufacturer founder Suda51 had a strong vision not only for Lollipop Chainsaw, but all of his works. From the Silver Case to Killer 7 and beyond, there's a quirky flair to their aesthetics and gameplay. Suda's games share a certain eccentricity, and Lollipop Chainsaw absolutely carried that torch. He was intent on creating a bright comedic zombie game, as an antithesis to the typical dark-toned horror presentation in many games at the time. There was a surge in zombie media, especially in the gaming sphere, with existing franchises even creating zombie spin-off games like Red Dead Redemption, Undead Nightmare, and Yakuza Dead Souls. And despite the saturation of the genre, Lollipop Chainsaw stands out thanks to its spirited art direction, which, at least for me, overshadows its slightly repetitive combat. Comedy and zombies have been a successful combination long before the release of Lollipop Chainsaw. But its juxtaposition of humour and gore is pushed further by rainbows and sparkles. To visualise the atmosphere of the game, imagine the hyper-feminine aesthetic of Legally Blonde mixed with the horror setting of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, along with the crude comedy you'd expect from the early to late 2000s. It's an experience that was worked on by so many different people in the entertainment industry, and seeing just how much heart went into it made me find the game even more charming. So charming, in fact, that I had to make a video to share my adoration for the game and the insane story of Lollipop Chainsaw's development. The influence of music has been prevalent across all of Suda51's career and games, from characters named after singers to Grasshopper Manufacture's name being inspired by a song by a British rock band. It's very clear he's passionate about pop culture, and that couldn't be more obvious with Lollipop Chainsaw. Even Travis' touchdown of No More Heroes came to be because Suda was super into Jackass at the time, and created the character with Johnny Knoxville in mind. In fact, he even showed his team a clip from the show, and hilariously was the only one laughing in the room. After watching all the interviews, it was impossible for me to find Suda unlikable. He doesn't seem to care much about what others think, and just wants to make something fun. Fortunately, that carefree nature shines through in a lot of his games too, resulting in some rather bizarre but undeniably enjoyable titles. Quite unabashedly, he even admits he came up with the idea for Lollipop Chainsaw while on the toilet, information that most people would probably keep to themselves. In all these interviews, Suda keeps telling players to play the game while eating pizza and popcorn and chugging down soda, getting their controllers greasy in the process. He stresses that this is an upbeat game to simply play and enjoy. It's not a somber experience at all. Suda really hones in on marketing it as a casual game for a casual atmosphere, and I feel like his personality is perfectly suited to creating an experience like that. Going back to influences, it's clear this game is trying to be very American, but more so in a characteristic sort of way. In the Art of Grasshopper Manufacture book, Suda gives a deeper insight into how this may have come about. We were thinking about an international release from the start, and wanted to make a zombie game that could make American people laugh. Lollipop Chainsaw was pretty catchy. We had zombies and chainsaws, and the character's image fit pretty well too. Just like a movie, it's set in a small town high school. The story elements were nothing new, but we had the feeling that we'd be making something unique by combining all these parts. There were a lot of focal points. I think we were able to embody America in a really cool way. I was surprised. Even now, it has a deep-rooted popularity in America. It turned into something beyond what I imagined. Suda's love for American media, coupled with the intentions of having Lollipop Chainsaw be a worldwide title, were combined into a lovingly satirical depiction of the United States, with a giant Elvis Presley zombie included. But that all-American flavour extends past its characters and setting too. In an interview with GameSpot, Suda says that the visuals were inspired by the art direction of the 80s, also a time when many zombie flicks were made. While the main essence is vivid in colour palettes, we attempted to present the graphics in a matte texture. The finishing touch was the addition of American pop art styles, drawn from Western comics. In the Grasshopper Manufacture book, he delves further, saying that art design has always been at the core of art development, so it naturally shows up in the blueprints of each game we make. Looking back on this art is less about the impressions of that time, and more about the memories we find while reminiscing and considering the people involved, and the scent of that particular scene. Even as I get older, I feel like each scene is still fresh. I couldn't agree with him more. As while many titles get lost to unoriginality, Lollipop Chainsaw and pretty much every Grasshopper game achieves a unique edge, claiming cult status every single time. The story of Lollipop Chainsaw was born in Japan, and as more people got involved and the project gained momentum, Warner Brothers came on board. The script was then sent over to the US, with none other than Hollywood director James Gunn rewriting the scenario before sending it back to Japan. He was also in charge of casting the game's English voice actors, as well as directing the recording sessions. And let me just spend a moment going through some of the talent behind the voices of Lollipop Chainsaw.
Your turn, you whiny MySpace-haired jerk!
First up, we have Tara Strong as Juliet Starling, who also voices Twilight Sparkle in My Little Pony, Bubbles in the Powerpuff Girls, and Riku from Final Fantasy X. Then there's Michael Rosenbaum playing Nick, who is also Martinex in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy and Lex Luthor in Smallville. There are a couple other cast members who would go on to feature in Guardians of the Galaxy as well. Next we have Linda Cardellini as Cordelia, who plays Velma in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, again directed by Gunn. Even his brother Sean has a role in Lollipop Chainsaw, voicing the school outcast and antagonist Swan. Finally, I want to mention Mariska's actor Shawnee Smith, who is well known for her character Amanda in the Saw series, and who I loved in the 1988 version of The Blob. A lot of the voice actors ended up in roles in Gunn's future films, or were at least in his previous work. Either way, he brought some great talent to the game. While he didn't work in Hollywood, cutscene director Yudai Yamaguchi was known for directing Japanese horror comedy movies himself, so there was an extra level of film influence brought to the table. Without a doubt, Lollipop Chainsaw is an incredibly collaborative project, and I've only just touched upon its links with Hollywood. As well as this, there are connections within the gaming industry. Suda is no stranger to working with well-known figureheads of the gaming world, previously collaborating with Shinji Mikami for Killer 7 and Shadows of the Damned. For Lollipop Chainsaw, Akira Yamaoka, best known for composing music for the Silent Hill series, was on board as the music director. Jimmy Urin, the lead singer of the band Mindless Self-Indulgence, composed the boss music and also lent his voice to one of the game's villains. While Lollipop Chainsaw did have original music composed for it, there were a lot of licensed songs added with a few tracks from the 80s, again serving as a nod to that golden era of zombie movies. Juliet has a multitude of alternate costumes, a number of which were references to certain zombie anime series. This includes character outfits from High School of the Dead, Dead Man Wonderland, Man Yu Hikensho, and Is This a Zombie? There was even a pre-order bonus of an Ash Williams costume from The Evil Dead. All in all, Lollipop Chainsaw is a love letter to zombie media, and certainly doesn't shy away from that. The references in Lollipop Chainsaw are endless. The game's third stage, O'Bannon Farm, is likely alluding to Return of the Living Dead director and screenwriter Dan O'Bannon. On top of that, the Fulci Fun Center shares the name of Italian horror director Lucio Fulci, and Juliet's school San Romero High being an obvious nod to George A. Romero. It's actually really impressive how much there is to notice, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more that can be picked up on. In general, playing Lollipop Chainsaw feels like a blast to the past. Its mentions of MySpace, Facebook, and Amazon wishlists are a reminder of the internet culture at the time. These days, Amazon is still going strong, but MySpace is dead and Facebook is mainly used by people over the age of 30. Nowadays, high school students are more likely on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, or Snapchat. A moment that stuck out to me personally was when Sleigh Bell's Riot Rhythm began to play during one of the earlier levels, a song I was absolutely obsessed with when I was around 16. It quickly dawned on me that I would have loved this game if I played it back then too, which brought about a newfound sense of appreciation for Lollipop Chainsaw. The infectious positivity and confidence of the high-spirited cheerleader Juliet Starling was enough to make me adore her presence, but a lot more went into her design than just making her vibrant. Suda was intent on making the next heroine idol of the gaming world, frequently citing Lara Croft as an example. In the Grasshopper Manufacture book, Suda explains that the original idea for this project came up on a whim. I've always wanted to do something with zombies. When I was thinking of what kind of character we should have, I was told that a game with a female lead wouldn't sell. I wanted to break that jinx, and I also thought a new heroine was in order for the video game industry. It was set in America, so I thought that the character should be a fighting cheerleader and the weapon a chainsaw. And all these images came together quickly to make her a fun character. While perhaps not as renowned as the Tomb Raider, Juliet certainly has found popularity, something which was made even more apparent to me as I discovered TikTok is saturated with Lollipop Chainsaw fan cams. I was also happy to see that a lot of the fans and creators of these videos were mostly women, especially since the marketing and reputation of the game would have you believe the audience would be largely made up of men. There was even a competition for who would become Juliet for the advertisements, resulting in famous cosplayer Jessica Negri being the real-life Juliet.
A friend turned me on to Zombie Gone, a brand new detergent from Lollipop Chainsaw, specially formulated to get out even the toughest brain matter stains.
I think a lot of the charm of Juliet's design also comes from the resurgence of 2000s fashion in the realm of social media in recent years. The game is very much defined by the era it came out in, through all its references and style of humour. The designs of most other characters aren't as faithful, and span a number of different time periods, but Juliet has a couple very Y2K-centric outfits to choose from. It's actually something I wish they expanded on, since most of the alternate costumes are trying to be as nude as possible, or are just the designs of other characters in-game or from other media. In a lot of ways, I treat Lollipop Chainsaw as a time capsule of sorts, so I would have really liked to see more in the ways of fashion trends represented too. Although we did get a comment on parachute pants being out of style, which funnily enough did make a comeback not so long ago.
At least you'll never have to wear parachute pants, Nick, even if they come back in style.
Japanese illustrator Neko Shogun was the key figure behind the concept art and character design of Juliet, as well as her weapon design. She would often draw Nintendo characters in a more mature way, and I honestly can't think of anyone better suited for her role in Lollipop Chainsaw, as her style and subject matter naturally fits the tone of the game. I personally admire her powerful depiction of femininity and sexuality. Her artwork is so effortlessly cool and contemporary, as if belonging in a fashion magazine. The art of Grasshopper Manufacture gives us even more insight into the birth of Juliet's appearance, with Suda51 saying, "The character design was done by the illustrator Neko Shogun. She didn't do all of them, but Juliet Starling's family were designed by her, and we expanded from there for the rest of the characters." There were some changes in Juliet's character design. Everyone had something to say about her. At first, she was going to be this stern-faced kid, but Kadokawa Games thought that she'd be better received as a cute girly character in Japan, and that we should make her face a bit softer. The North American publisher Warner Bros. Games had some strong opinions too, so even the faces on the Japanese and American packages are different. After that, there were opinions expressed for her eyes and the upper arms. She is the main heroine, so there was a lot of particularly specific feedback. Together, the team were able to create a memorable cheerleader protagonist, something which is also incorporated into combat, giving a unique flair to the moves available. And for a game that prides itself on the nonsensical, there are actually a lot of smart choices made in regards to fostering a distinctive and eccentric style. Lollipop Chainsaw is a game that is dedicated to its atmosphere in every way, with the bosses even having their abilities and weapons based on different music genres. The game's far-fetched nature provides for some wholesome moments, particularly involving Juliet and Nick's relationship. Clearly, Juliet loves her boyfriend dearly, saving him from turning into a zombie, but rendering him as a decapitated head accessory in the process. Despite him literally having no body, she still tries to uplift his spirits and talks about their future together. She really doesn't care that he's just a head. Even though Nick is rightfully disgruntled about his new state, they still work together to slay zombies and get through these changes together. Throughout your playthrough, the two will constantly joke around and have conversations, resulting in an already very lively game being even more dynamic.
Do you want to have babies someday, Nick?
I think that's rather irrelevant, considering my situation.
I don't know. We could take a skin sample and put it in a petri dish and use magic to grow a baby.
Well, maybe.
Cool! There's a 50% chance it will be a cannibal.
Nick also points out the absurdity of the predicaments that the duo find themselves in, much like the player is probably doing. This is one of the many reasons I can't take the game seriously. It's so obviously trying to be unserious. Suda states in the Grasshopper Manufacture book that he wanted it to be a B-level horror game series, and that they had even planned it up to a third game. Lollipop Chainsaw became one of the major titles for Grasshopper, selling over 1 million copies worldwide, so it's a shame the story didn't get to continue for whatever reason. Suda adds that they began development around 2009. It started because we thought it would be fun to do between our main titles. We thought we could take it easy with an experimental horror game. So in hindsight, it's wild how big the project grew, involving all kinds of names in the film and gaming industry. In terms of the legacy of Lollipop Chainsaw, James Gunn later drew influence from the game for the Suicide Squad, saying that it inspired Harley Vision, where through Harley Quinn's eyes, violent scenes are mixed with flowers and glitter. In July 2022, Kadokawa Games' successor Dragami Games announced a remake of Lollipop Chainsaw, set to launch sometime this year. However, both Gunn and Suda51 have clarified that they aren't involved in the project. As of writing this, no further information has come out since, so who knows what will happen. For me, Juliet joins the roster with Bayonetta and Alice as one of my favourite women in that era of games. And what better way to solidify a video game heroine than a plethora of TikTok fan cams? I will never forget the intoxicating insanity of that first playthrough of the game, with all its hyper cuteness and use of Comic Sans. It's a title that has its drawbacks, but for all the heart and soul poured into it, it's hard to not enjoy what it has to offer. Suda51's outlook and passion for games is touching, and I look forward to what he and his team create in the future. But for now, I'll be diving into its older titles that I missed out on. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
One, two, two.